Welcome to part two of Earth Deed series on understanding and responding to our climate impacts. The first video established that climate change is real and that humans are the primary cause. This video will explore where this is all heading and possible future scenarios. First, let's take a moment to consider how we got here. You probably all know this American game show, The Price is Right, where contestants win prizes for accurately appraising the costs of various merchandise. What does this have to do with anything? My point is that most of us grew up in cultures where it's second nature to do this. If I asked you to estimate the price of this car, this shower stall, or flight to Seattle, I bet you could come up with ballpark figures. But if I asked you how much carbon dioxide is emitted by driving this car, or taking a shower, or flying to Seattle, most of us don't have a clue. Why is that? Well, to be frank, we humans have all benefited, even gotten to where we are today, by ignoring the environmental costs of our activities. This seemed to work for a long time, but eventually these costs added up and are creating many of the global crises we're facing, including climate change. Now, I want to refer again to the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which is composed of thousands of climate scientists in dozens of countries. In their latest report, they state that Earth has already warmed about zero point 0.8 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels and will continue to rise, even if we stopped all emissions today. So there are big changes coming that are already in the pipeline. They're already baked in, so to speak. Yet there's also a wide range of additional warming that we do have some control over. And the IPCC has modeled a variety of future scenarios, ranging from stabilization all the way to a 4 to 5 degrees centigrade rise in global temperature by 2100. Now, one might reasonably ask, is 4 to 5 degrees centigrade even a big deal? It's hard to even tell such a difference when you go outside. You probably wouldn't even need to dress differently. But I'd say that this is a misleading way to think about climate change. And a more accurate framework is thinking of the Earth like a living body. So 37 degrees centigrade is the normal temperature for a human. If you get a fever 1 to 2 degrees above that, you might still go to work, but you're feeling it. You got a headache, you're feeling a little weak. If you look at 2 to 4 degrees of fever, now you have a very high fever. You might be having hallucinations, even convulsions. And if we go up to 4 to 5 degrees, this is very dangerous with the potential of brain damage, even death. So, how does this translate to the Earth? Well, we're already running this small fever of around zero point 0.8 degrees centigrade above normal. And even at this level, glaciers are starting to melt. We're seeing some dramatic changes in the weather. If we go even slightly higher to say 1.5 degrees, it's likely that by 2100 sea levels will rise over half a meter and weather will become even more extreme, resulting in potentially millions of environmental refugees. Looking at 2 degrees warmer, it's likely that many plants and animals would risk extinction, and we may experience a global crop decline, leading to widespread starvation. And at 3 to 4 degrees warmer, now there's the potential collapse of the ocean circulation of heat and salt around the world. 40 to 70% of species would risk extinction. And at these levels, we also risk tipping systems in ways that could make things much worse. For example, if the West Antarctic ice sheets melt, that could result in a 3-meter rise in sea level. And if the Greenland ice sheet melts, that's another 5 meters. This would also lead to the release of gigatons of methane that are trapped under the permafrost, thus furthering global warming even more. What we do or don't do now will have immense impacts on the planet for millennium to come. The longer we wait, the less likely the planet will stay below 2 degrees centigrade. And continuing with business as usual will certainly have devastating impacts on the planet. Let's look at the numbers. Since the 1850s, when the first oil wells were drilled, all the way to 2000, we've emitted over 1,000 gigatons of CO2, and that's resulted in the current warming. We've emitted 380 since 2000, and that's baked in this additional rise. Burning through our current fossil fuel reserves will likely increase global temperatures by 3 to 4 degrees. And if we just say hell with it and just burn through all our estimated fossil fuel reserves, it would raise temperatures even further. Okay, so here we are. We've emitted about 1,400 gigatons of CO2 to date, and we could emit about twice that again if we burn through all remaining fossil fuels. If we want to have a fighting chance of limiting global warming to 2 degrees centigrade, we can't emit more than another 500 gigatons. That's our carbon budget, as it were. There's two big problems with this. First, at current rates, we will literally exhaust this carbon budget in about 13 years. The second problem is this means we will need to leave about 85% of remaining fossil fuels in the ground. And these reserves are estimated at around $22 trillion. So you can imagine oil companies are a bit reluctant to write off $22 trillion from their books as stranded assets. But one way or another, the carbon bubble is going to burst. The question for us is whether we will act in time to forestall the worst impacts of global warming. How we're currently responding to this crisis is the topic of the next video. Thank you.